timeline would be for this. That's reasonable. But I would move to to delegate to the DOJ and maybe the co-chairs to put together that put together that transmittal letter that pulls out these recommendations to the legislature to be sent to the legislature with the recommendation with the full report as soon as feasible after the completion of the report. I don't know what the actual timeline for that is, given folks' existing work and lives, etc. But I think as soon as feasible.
And I think that is what we already voted on in the last board meeting, right? So
yeah, and the team's working on that.
Yeah. So the only question was about time, and I think it should be concurrent with the report release.
Okay, and then my suggestion was also kind of not to supplant that initial transmittal, but to do an enhanced piece within the subcommittees if that was something you all were interested in doing. But the team is working on it. It was in the minutes. And I thank you for the clarification, because that was one of the motions that we wanted to make sure, specifically what you all wanted transmitted. And so I think that gives us a clearer idea. The other thing just to kind of piggyback onto what Allison was saying about the sort of best practices versus the highlighted recommendations, if there's anything, maybe the way to do it is we can have that they can all be, recommendations and best practices. But if anyone saw something that they felt was incorrect or wrong, that would bring that to our attention now. Otherwise, we just, this was work that was done in the subcommittees, and no one has highlighted anything like that. So we would be comfortable moving forward with them as being recommendations and best practices, if that is what the board has envisioned. We just weren't clear when we were putting that together if that was really your intent.
Yeah, so again, this is what I was clear on it when we voted on it in our last meeting, that this is what we wanted to do. This is what we've done in the past. We didn't have a nice a document as well organized as we do now, and all of those best practices and recommendations seem to have carried over from the full report and the work that the committees did. And if they didn't, somebody should speak up. The only exception to that I saw was on the pretext stops, the recommendation did not carry over. And again, that's page 8 of the, actually that was in the executive summary. So I think it does show up in the best practices document. So we're good, never mind.
Okay. Would anyone else like to offer comments on the report?
You're looking at the report.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Primarily in the quick facts document separately.
I guess we're
There's an echo. I didn't quite catch that, Dr. Raphael.
We're open to either.
A question maybe for DOJ staff. In looking at the community caretaking contacts and individuals with perceived disabilities, is there a way to understand calls for service as opposed to stops? I think will probably be a disproportionately higher number of calls for service related to contacts with individuals with perceived disabilities as opposed to officer-initiated contact or stops. And when I read it, it feels like officers are stopping individuals with perceived disability on a self-initiated context higher than others. I don't think that's the correct representation.
Can I get a clarification on the question here? Is this specifically in reference to content in the quick facts? I know that you mentioned that before, Chief Swing. I'm looking through the quick facts document for. It's not. It's just a very short. They're just snippets from within the report for each section, so it won't go into as much detail in the quick facts as in the full report. Is this question about the quick facts specifically?
It is, and I haven't found the corresponding section in the report. I just saw it in quick facts and it caught my eye. And I asked myself, why is that? And I wondered, is this looking at all stops holistically? And because the overwhelming number of stops are officer initiated, such as traffic stops, the reader might jump to a conclusion that these are stops that are initiated by officers that have a disproportionately higher number of perceived disabilities than others. I was looking at both page 3 and of the quick facts report, and then the top of page 4 where it talks about use of force.
Yeah, so the quick document just contains a few of the distributions of various outcomes by disability that are included in the discussions within that section of the report. The draft report does contain some information there that's been added since in response to requests made during which meeting was that? Stop Data Subcommittee meeting? I have my notes in front of me. Stop Data or the Policy Subcommittee. Actually, I do have my notes here. Stop Data Subcommittee meeting. And it's on page 85 of the meeting materials. So there's a breakdown in the beginning of the section within that disability.
Kevin, you cut out briefly. Was that 2.5 or 3.5? What was the page number again?
85.
85, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so there was some content added there towards the beginning of the discussion about community caretaking breakdowns. Let's look like it is the second paragraph on that page that breaks down the number, like the percentage of community caretaking stops that were in response to a calls for service, and contrasts that with non-community caretaking stops, as well as talks about the proportion of those stops that end in a psychiatric hold as measured by the results of stop variable. And so that's content that's been added in between. It's a paragraph that covers that. It's in the full board report. It's not in the quick facts, though.
Would it be helpful to the reader to reference in the quick facts the section for more detail where that can be found in the full report? It seems that might be a way for, if someone sees the quick facts and wants to learn more, they know specifically where to flip in the full report to get more detail.
So just so I understand the directive there, is this specific to this one, or is this that throughout the document it would be helpful?
Yeah, and it's a request. It's not a directive. It's a request to help the reader reference information in the report. As I see it here, I'm thinking about it. I saw it for community caretaking, but I think it would be beneficial throughout if that's possible. I think it might help the reader to reference and find more information if the quick facts is of interest to them.
Yeah, so adding like page numbers to each of the sections where, okay, I read this in the quick facts.
Yeah,
where in the report do I go to it?
Exactly.
That's a really good idea that we could implement fairly easily. So we'll just have to make sure that probably will be one of the last things that gets put in here, because we'll have to have all the page numbers finalized in the formatted version. But yeah, that's absolutely something we can add. Reference page. Yeah.
Okay, would any other...
And also thank you, DOJ staff, and specifically I know, Kevin, you had a role in it for the additional information on calls for service data and analysis. I appreciate your work on that.
Thank you, Chief Swing.
Thanks to Rachel in the Research Center for doing those analyses and coming up with that content.
Are there any further comments from board members? If not, why don't we move to public comment before we take a break? I think we have we're just a few minutes behind schedule at the moment, not so bad. And so we can open it up. So why don't we start in Southern California? If you could, I guess, unmute yourself and maybe turn your video on if you're not on the phone. So Karen Glover.
Hi, folks. Thank you for all of this important work today. You're really a model for kind of how we plug through difficult work, and I appreciate all that. Specifically on the RIPA report draft on page 16, footnote number 22, this is a methodological point, and I'm pretty sure I should have raised it earlier in the process, but here I am. It's referring to prioritizing when officers indicate the reason for the stop, prioritizing whether or not it's a traffic violation over whether it also involved, quote, reasonable suspicion. This goes to the issue of the pretextual stop. The Maine federal law, y'all had this discussion last meeting. One of the main federal laws is the Wren decision in 1996 allowing pretextual stops. And in that decision, it says, basically, it doesn't matter the subjective mindset of the officer when making the stop. What matters is if there's an objective reason for making the stop, which is a traffic violation. So what I'm suggesting is that if you, in your methodology, or even in the regulations themselves, suggesting that if there's reasonable suspicion that actually is the precursor to finding the traffic violation, that you're actually silencing and erasing a lot of data that would tell us about the salience of pretextual stops going on, and pretextual stops, as we research them, signal how law enforcement operates in a racialized society in specific terms here. I hope that made some sense. I'm actually on another meeting right now trying to listen to y'all's important work. I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your work.
What?
Hello.
You're such.
I'd like to make a comment, if I may.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mute. Go ahead, Mr. Hilton. Sorry.
I'd like to take up on what Ms. Glover just said. The idea of analyses that have to do with stops, pretextual or otherwise. Analyses of these things are greatly dependent on what the narratives say. As you know, because I've talked about it incessantly, the narratives are unavailable. Who has access to them? I don't. Does the board? Has anyone ever analyzed the narratives that have been put in, the over 12 million of them that have been added to the database over the last 4 years? I don't know of anyone who has. I have looked at the local narratives, local meaning the San Diego Police Department and the San Diego Sheriff's Office. And those things are a treasure trove. So what I mean to say is that we ought not to speak about analyses of pretextual stops or any other stops if we do not or cannot analyze narratives. Another matter, we spent this morning and the last 4 years examining data, analyzing data, speaking about data. But did you know that data is not necessary? Not according to the Attorney General. The Attorney General conducted an investigation of the Kern County Sheriff's Office, found violations of about 15 of the most widely used or results and actions, and filed suit and obtained a stipulated settlement without having data. How is that possible? Why do we spend so much money collecting data? It is either impossible or the Attorney General is not telling the truth. Because last evening, after about 330 days, the Attorney General wrote to me to say that they did all the things I mentioned without having data. I choose not to believe the Attorney General. So should you. And that takes me into the rest of the data. You should support this report and the data that it allegedly represents if you believe that the data has integrity or it is reasonably representative of what happens in the street. Now, if the data was not validated, you shouldn't do that. The CADOJ has chosen not to validate the data, even though it has the tools and the other data sets to do so. I have validated local data, especially the use of force elements. It is lacking. I say, and I dare anyone to contradict it, that about 40% of the use of force records have not been reported. I put it to you that whatever outrageous disparities you have, they're probably worse. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hilton. Are there any other members of the public from Southern California who would like to make a comment? Seeing none, let's move to Northern California. Being no comment, let's move to Central California. Sorry. Skip the middle of the state. Sorry about that.
Steve, there is someone just with the name of guest raising their hand for public comment.
Okay, so please,
Yes.
please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Raphael. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Scott Loggins. I'm one of the 2 assistant executive directors for the California Commission on Peace Officer Standard and Training. You may recognize my name. I'm the author of the letter that you have reviewed earlier. I do want to emphasize Mr. Swing and I think Mr. Hampton were accurate. The reason for the last paragraph of the letter in the response to the RIPA board's recommendations was expressly due to the important nature of AB 846. It's not only important to the Commission on Posts, but to the law enforcement community as well. The letter was simply to express the fact that due to the expedited timeline that is we're under based on the Administrative Procedures Act, we would not have been able to take under consideration the recommendations from your board within the time constraints of the mandate of the start of the legislative act. Having said that, as it's codified in that particular letter, Post is not only more than willing to work with the board, but actually is actively seeking input from the board so that we can fine tune those concerns and make sure that they comport with both federal and California constitutional concerns, as well as further collaboration with the actual experts in the field, specifically the psychologists. So I just want to reiterate that this was just an ask for a delay in taking these matters into consideration, specifically so that there was no delay in implementing the Regulatory Act as codified in statute. Having said that, to the extent possible, I don't know who can actually represent the RIPA board before the commission, but on behalf of our executive director, I would like to invite either the co-chairs or anybody who's dedicated as the specific representative from Post to address our commission next week at the commission meeting. We'd be more than glad to listen to your concerns and further the conversation towards this very important cause.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for those comments. Okay, so are there any other public comment at this point? Okay, hearing none, I believe we're scheduled for a short break, and we probably should take at least a 10-minute break so we can get up and stretch their legs. So why don't we come back at 12:15 as is on our schedule? Then we have just a few more agenda items. Oh, yes, that's right. Thank you. See you in 10 minutes. Okay, everybody, if you can hear my voice, it's roughly time to come back. All right, I think maybe let's give everybody one more minute. Just to make sure we have quorum. Okay, perhaps we should get started. So we have a few more items on our agenda for this afternoon. So first, we have any further discussion on the RIPA report or any further action pertaining to just the report, the content, and again, recall any format issues. Please feel free to email the DOJ staff, and preferably by Friday, given the tight timeline they're on. So why don't we open the floor once more for further comment on the report. And then also we can, of course, take into account what we heard during the public comment period. Hey.
This is Board Member LaWanda. I thought it was nice to hear from the Pope for them to chime in. It was a little bit more clarification. I thought that was nice.
Thank you, Board Member Hawkins. Brendan, are you making a move to say something? It looked like you were unmuting. No, you're okay.
I was turning up my volume.
Okay. Board Member Guerrero?
This is more of a comment. I think there are a lot of powerful stories that can be told from this draft report. But what was really standing out to me was the data that indicated that the most common reason for a stop is traffic related. And that points to the need for deeper analysis about which of those are moving and non-moving violations. We have that information, and taking a deeper dive into that to understand how pretext stops might be occurring. And then the data point around Black community members being disproportionately stopped, followed by the data point around Black community members being disproportionately searched, detained, curbed, handcuffed, and removed from their car during vehicle stops at a rate that's more than double that of white community members. Followed by the data point that the discovery rates, the discovery for contraband and illegal substances for Black community members was far lower than that of white community members. So I think there can no longer be any dispute about whether there is demonstrable profiling going on, and I'm just pulling out a few data points here. And so I would hope that going forward in the new year, in our committee work, that we can think about when we're amplifying this work and this data, that we're starting to draw out the stories and also, what we need to do going forward from here, right? we have been collecting data for a while now. We're bringing all of the agencies online for data collection, and I think there's some really important work ahead to make all of this data matter and see what we can do as a collective of diverse voices here on the board and with the community to really turn things around, because this is not the California that I want to be raising my son in, and I'm sure it's not the California that you want to see in the future.
Guerrero, it's also with bike stops, so thank you for pointing those out.
Right.
We've been more disproportionately stopped when we're riding a bicycle.
I wanted to jump in really quickly, and I apologize if this isn't the right time to do so. It just seems appropriate given Member Guerrero's comments. I held off on adding this to the conversation earlier because I just didn't want it to get more complicated, but I did have one or two minor sort of comments on the report, and specifically I'm looking at the quick facts mock-up. And I'm saying this as a specific to general response, but I also mean it to sort of, I guess, put an exclamation point on Member Guerrero's comments. So, and it's to the point that I think one of the things that we can do, or I think that we should think about, is the extent to which any of these materials are actually, discernible for the public. They're easily understood, digested, applied by not just experts or scholars or folks that are way in the weeds and wonks on this stuff, but just everyday Californians, right? And so as an example of that, I just wanted to point to on the quick facts mock-up, one of the data points is the under racial and ethnic disparities is the result of stop or no action. And this is the kind of thing for like those of us that are like wonky and in the weeds, we know what this means. But if you're just run-of-the-mill, just California resident who's doesn't do this stuff all the time, and you're reading across these data, that particular piece may not make sense to you. So specifically, just reading from it, in responding to the question, quote, result of stop, officers indicated they took no action for Black individuals 2.3 times as often as they did for white individuals. Now, I know what this means. A lot of you know what this means. And the point of collecting this kind of data and pointing this out would be to suggest that many of our Black residents are basically just getting harassed, right? But that is not at all clear to an everyday person in reading the description of this data. I'm going to, if I'm an everyday person and I read across these three data points, I read, wait a minute, you're telling me that Black people are way more likely to have force used on them. They're way more likely to have bad things happen after they get arrested. And then literally in the third data point, wait, you're telling me that they're more likely to be stopped and nothing happens? That doesn't make any sense to me. You see what I'm saying? So, and that now, of course, again, to be clear, I'm a researcher. I understand exactly what this means myself. I'm just trying to give an example of how if we're not careful in the way that this data is presented, and if we're not careful in the way that we actually talk about this data in the public, we can't assume people are going to understand what we're talking about, and we can't assume that they're going to feel terribly, in the conversation, right? It's an alienating kind of language. And so I think we have to think really hard about, who is our audience for these kinds of reports? And typically, as they are designed by scholars and lawyers and read and worked on by scholars and lawyers more often than not, we tend to lose sight of the fact that we need people to be able to understand what we're talking about in very real terms. So I just point this out as an example, but I think this is something we need to keep in mind throughout, that anything that we come up with really needs to be discernible to the public. It can't just be pointed at the same old lawyers and wonks that are frankly in all of these insular conversations. And so just a point, I appreciate Member Guerrero's comments, but I wanted to add a specific example here so we could see it in action.
Okay, thank you for that. Board Member Armelin. Are there any further comments from other board members regarding the report or suggestions for further action? I realize we're at the end of the year, but we can always start thinking about next year.
This is Board Member Ochoa. Just to point out, I think I've mentioned this before, but just so we have it at our last meeting, 2 things that I would like to think about, including as a point of discussion for next year, is again a further dive into the post process. And I think the processes that post engages in coming up with its training and its recommendations that it promulgates, and understanding more of that. I think the report itself was asking about funding and how that funding is spent on the different things. And so I just having a better understanding of what's going on with post, particularly as it's being tasked with more and more around addressing bias, particularly in differentiating outcomes of different communities, that I think that's an important topic for us to be involved in more. And then second, the question of data access, which kind of to some degree flows from that last point as well, understanding a bit more about how the RIPA data has been used. I think there's a lot of good examples that I've seen, at least coming out of LA County, of reporting relying on RIPA data, advocacy relying on RIPA data. So both identifying kind of how it's been useful, I think might be a good piece to include next year, but also information on how folks are getting access to the data, because I know like ACLU even personally has had difficulty getting access to the data, having it be released in full so that it can conduct the analyses that were kind of anticipated under the law. So both kind of the values of its use and then the limitations on access, so that we can think about ways to facilitate that and increase that. And also, as recommendations, the extent it's being used different ways in local jurisdictions, can provide recommendations to other agencies of how, more specifically, they can use these, particularly as we're talking about smaller agencies who lack some of the resources as the bigger agencies to kind of hire external entities or think through different ways that could help give them guidance on how they could use the data, but as well as external bodies as well. So those are 2 things that I would like to see kind of as a place to explore next year.
This is Board Member Kulkarni. If I could piggyback on the last 3 comments that were made, and just share that, from the perspective of the Asian American Pacific Islander community and some of the work that we have been doing at APCON and Stop AAPI Hate, I think, I just want to underscore how important not only this information and data is and the transparency, but the access to it. We have seen over and over again over the last 18 months that our community members don't feel safe. They don't feel that they don't continue to have trust in public institutions. And I think we see that replicated in data across all communities. We even see that as voiced by, Supreme Court Justice Sotomayor this morning. And so I think it's for that reason, the work we're doing is so critical. It's important that in civil society and in our democracy, people do have that trust and faith in public institutions and in those entities that provide public safety. And so I think that, even as we have disagreements about specifics regarding the report or regarding post, I think it's important for us to keep in mind that ensuring this data is accessible, taking action to make sure that changes are made will ultimately serve that greater purpose of ensuring our democracy, which is essentially under threat even today.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any further comments? Okay, hearing none. We do have a important matter of business to take care of. First of all, I just want to take the moment to thank Chief Swing, who not only has been the co-chair for the last year, but also has, I believe, served on the board since the board's founding, if not the entire life of the board, almost the entire life of the board. And I personally have really enjoyed working with him as co-chair of RIPA, and then also on the subcommittees. And you're going to, not only are you leaving as a co-chair, but you're leaving the board. So we're going to miss you, and we thank you for your service, Chief Swing, and for your dedication and your willingness to engage and just for the last 4 years. So thank you very much. I don't know. Chief Swing's going to give us closing remarks. So if you want to say something now, that's fine. But we can wait until the end.
Yeah, I'll wait until the end. Thank you, Dr. Raphael. And it's been since about 4 years. It'll be 4 years in March, so not quite since the inception. Retired Chief Ed Medrano did a lot of heavy lifting, along with Andrea Guerrero and others, getting the reg started. So yeah, it's just been about 4 years. Thank you.
But that being said, so we do have, I believe the terms of co-chairs are 1 year. So that means both Chief Swing and I are no longer co-chairs after this meeting, which means we have to nominate new co-chairs and then vote on them. So if I have the procedure correct, Allison, do we open the floor for nominations and then we'll vote?
Yes, I do want to give one clarification. Nancy's coming on to say the same thing, which is that both you and Chief Swing will serve as co-chairs until December 31st. So we will work with you on the final report edits and so on. And then the new chairs will start next year because to finish out the report process.
Right, including press. So maybe January
5th or 6th. That first week in January.
So you're not off the hook yet, Chief Swing.
No.
Okay, well, let's open the floor for nominations.
I'd like to make 2 nominations, if I may. Okay. I'd like to renominate you, Dr. Raphael. I think you've done a fine job leading us. And I'd like to nominate Ms. Ochoa, who has demonstrated a level of dedication and diligence to the task of this board that's really profound, and I think should make an excellent leader of this board.
Andrea, excellent suggestion. Excellent. Same here. I nominate Raphael. He did an excellent job this year. I take my hat off to him. It was awesome. Him and Chief Swing. And I like Melody. I think she's an awesome person. I think we need to put her in charge. Give her, nominate Melody too.
Do we have any further nominations? Or I wonder, do we have a quorum? Something I'm worried about here.
We do.
We do? Okay.
Professor Raphael, do you accept the nomination?
Oh yeah. Well, thank you for the kind words. I'm sure I'd be happy to keep doing it. Okay, and then you could dump me when you feel the need. So I guess we have to ask Melanie if she's Officer Hampton, are you also rotating off the board too, I believe? Did I hear that, or did I get that wrong?
No, sir, you got that correct. I will be retiring March 1st. So my replacement for Porak is Rich Randolph. He's also president of Colton POA, also African American. He's also on the board of directors for PORAC. So just a younger version, better looking version of me that'll be on the board. So
Well, congratulations. And we're gonna miss you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any further nomination for co-chairs? And I guess we should ask Melanie Ochoa if she accepts.
I have significant doubts that anyone actually wants to see me in charge of anything, but I will gladly accept the nomination to be co-chair. Thank you.
I want to firmly disagree with Board Member Ochoa's last comment. There are many of us who would very much like to see her serve as co-chair.
Thank you. I agree.
Okay, should we move to a vote? Do we vote on us individually, or are we a slate, given that there's two of us? Or may we vote individually? Why don't we start with a vote for Board Member Ochoa? And I'll just read people's names off the top. So, Andrea Guerrero.
Aye.
Board Member Hubbard. Board Member Hampton. This is vote for Melanie Ochoa for.
Oh, yes, I vote aye. Be careful what you wish for.
Sheriff Ayub.
Aye.
Brendan Woods. Okay. Chief Swing.
Aye.
Board Member Kajabi.
Aye. Big aye. Yeah.
Board Member Vang.
Aye.
Board Member Hawkins.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Did we miss anybody?
I
Yes,
say
this is
yes as well.
Board Member Kulkarni, yes. Aye.
And Pastor Kennedy with an aye as well.
Okay.
Amar, is Amar still on?
Yes, and I vote aye. Yes, for both.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I missed
Commissioner Ray.
Arlene's.
Oh, yeah.
That was a yes.
Commissioner Ray had to drop off. Professor Armeline.
I believe I was already asked this. I said aye already.
Oh, okay. And then Ronnie Vieta. Ronnie, are you still with us? Well, the motion carries unanimously. Congratulations, Melanie.
Congratulations.
Steve, do you want me to do the vote, or Chief Swing should probably do the vote for you? If you don't mind, Chief.
Would love to. We have a nomination accepted for Dr. Raphael to continue as co-chair. So we'll go ahead and take a roll call vote for Dr. Raphael to carry on as co-chair for a second term. And looking at the screen, Dr. Raphael, I'm not sure how you realized who's on the board here among a list of participants.
I'm happy to do it for you, Chief. I have a list.
That would be appreciated. Thank you.
Chief Swing, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chavang.
Aye.
Member Hampton.
Aye.
Member Kulkarni.
Aye.
Member Woods.
Aye.
Member Campa-Najjar,
Aye.
Member Hawkins,
Big I.
Member Kennedy,
Aye.
Member Ochoa, Member Ayub,
Aye.
Member Kajabi,
Right? See if you get a big eye too.
Member Armeline,
Aye.
and Member Guerrero.
Aye.
Again, that motion is unanimous. Congratulations to our new co-chairs. It's not that hard. It's a lot of work. No, it's not. We will help. We will help.
Okay. All right. So the last thing on our agenda are just closing remarks, and I'll just start by thanking all the members of the public who loyally attend and give us feedback, and of course the DOJ staff for this amazing report, and to my fellow board members. But I'd like to turn it over to my co-chair, Chief Swing, who again is his term will be ending shortly, and we're very appreciative of all your work, Chief Swing, and hope that we'll keep in touch and you'll continue to provide feedback and your expertise and guidance to us as we move forward. Chief Swing, it's up to you. The floor is yours.
Excellent. Dr. Raphael, thank you very much. As I look back,
Sorry.
Sorry, our apologies.
And you haven't voted on the final report sign off yet. That's the main event.
Want to make sure that gets done before we get off the call. So our apologies, Chief Swing, for the interruption. But most important board business that we need to vote on approval of the report and allow the co-chairs to work with us to finalize it. So if someone wishes to make a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Seconds it.
Okay, just to be clear that the motion is that the board has signed off on the report with any additional items that need to be wordsmithed, that the co-chairs will work with the DOJ to get that done. Okay.
And we do need to do a roll call vote on that as well.
I got the pad. Member Guerrero.
Aye.
Member Armeline.
Aye.
Member Kajabi.
Aye.
Member Ayub.
Aye.
Member Ochoa. Member Kennedy.
Aye.
Member Hawkins.
Aye.
Member Campa-Najjar.
Aye.
Member Woods.
Aye.
Member Kilcarney.
Aye.
Member Hampton.
Aye.
Member Vang.
Aye.
And Member Swing.
Aye.
The motion is unanimous. We have a report for 2022. And sorry, Chief, we'll turn it back to you. Congratulations.
All right. Yeah, congratulations to the board for getting the report across the goal line, and that doesn't happen without DOJ staff. And so I'll come back to DOJ here in just a bit. 45 months, Dr. Raphael. 45 months is how long it's been on the RIPA board, going from in-person meetings to now virtual meetings, obviously in response to the pandemic, which I will say these virtual meetings work out pretty good and cuts down on travel and maximizes time. So it's not always a bad thing. Over the last 4 years, I've learned a tremendous amount. Certainly have expanded my perspective, and it's been a really a great learning experience. I've enjoyed most of it, but definitely have enjoyed by far the most. My replacement will be Chief Abdul Pridgen, who is a recently appointed chief in the city of San Leandro. Previously was in Seaside, and he's the current outgoing president of the California Police Chiefs Association. I'm confident that Chief Pridgeon will add tremendous value to the dialogue and the conversation, and a perspective that the board will appreciate. Thank you to the DOJ staff. You are all masterful at herding cats. Whether it's the Stop Data Committee or the various other committees that you are all responsible for coordinating and staffing, of course, the full board, you add tremendous value in both the quality of your work and your passion for the work of the board. So your work cannot be overstated. So thank you, DOJ staff, for everything you do in making this board and this board successful. To the board. Like others, law enforcement is a challenging profession. Our success is truly interdependent on our relationship with the community that we serve. And community can be a smaller community or a larger community, but our success is dependent on a strong and healthy relationship. And we need your help as board members representing different communities in our state in that shared success. And that is accomplished by holding us to standards of excellence and ensuring that our work is fair and impartial. And when bias is exposed, that we work to address that, recognizing that we all bring implicit bias to the table. It's our job, it's your job as a board, obviously, to ensure that we root that out to the greatest extent possible. It's also your role in helping us in the communities by recognizing when things go right and being our strongest supporter when things go right. We know that in leadership that the behavior that's recognized and is the behavior that's more likely to happen. So I ask for your help in your communities to recognize the great work of law enforcement when you see it, to be there holding us accountable and also to be there cheering us on when things go right. Our profession is not perfect. We all have work to do, and we are committed as a profession. I know that, representing police chiefs throughout California. I know Sheriff Ayub would say the same thing, and Officer Hampton would say the same thing. We're committed to being better at what we do, and the work of this board will help with that. So in my final act as a co-chair and as a member of the RIPA board, I respectfully ask that we adjourn our meeting in honor of the men and women of law enforcement who valiantly serve each and every day through challenging times, who have served through this pandemic, much like other essential workers. Our officers and peace officers throughout California, deputies and officers alike, courageously run towards danger every day to help serve their community. And so with that, I respectfully adjourn our meeting and thank everyone for their time and adjourn our meeting in the honor of our peace officers in California. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Chief Swing.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, everybody.
You, Chief Swing. Nice to know you.
Chief Swing, you don't get off that easily. We also have a few words to say. First, we want to thank you. I first met you, Chief, at the Riverside, at the Compton meeting in March of 2018, and you took over for Chief Medrano at the following meeting in San Jose. You have been a champion for the board. You've served on many subcommittees. In addition to serving as co-chair of the board this last year. You were on the evidence-based reporting subcommittee, which later became the Stop Data Committee, and you've been interested in working on the community concerns and challenges facing racial and identity complaints against officers. In 2020, as president of the California Police Chiefs Association, you held a multi-day RIPA summit that was for chiefs and leaders in the state. Hundreds of police chiefs attended that summit. DOJ participated in that summit along with many others. And the goal of that summit was to get the word out to California's law enforcement about what the data collection is, and also the important work that the board has done over the past years. And so we really appreciate you for being a leader on that point and helping to educate other law enforcement in the state on this important, really important work that has been done over the last 5 or 6 years. So, so we want to thank you so much for everything that you have done. I also have one more thing that I need to say. I also want to acknowledge one of our RIPA team members who will be transitioning off to work on some other projects. Dominique Alcaraz has been with the RIPA board since 2018. Dominique came to us right out of Loyola Law School. She was a member of the Department of Justice's Honors Deputy Program, which is a very prestigious and hard to get into program. And she joined us in 2018 at that time. I first met Dominique at a RIPA board meeting in Riverside, and she has done so much work, not only for this report, but in past reports. She's been responsible for those matrices that we've seen on the bias complaints and the civilian complaints, and has worked on many, if not probably all sections in this year's report. And so Dominique is going to be working on developing other areas of expertise in her practice. And she will continue to do the trainings that the DOJ does for law enforcement on how to collect the RIPA stop data, but she will be moving to work on other projects within our office. So I just want to thank you, Dominique. It has been really a pleasure. It's really sad that you will be no longer a part of this team, because you have been such a huge part and made such a difference and such an impact in all of this work. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Nancy. I was not expecting this, so I really appreciate it. And if it's okay, I'd like to say a few words. Just, for those that I've worked with here in DOJ with RIPA, it has been an incredible experience. Every day we talk a lot about the issues that this board is prioritizing and is working very hard to make changes for. And I have been through, I guess, 2 different sets of individuals on the board since my time with DOJ, and every year it seems that we continue to get better and stronger at the work that you all do. And I am sad to be leaving. I'm not leaving this work because policing and constitutional rights are what I want to do in my legal career, but I will be doing other work, and I just want to say that I am very proud of the work that the board has done, and I am also very hopeful for where the board will go and what the board will do, and I truly, truly hope that this board will take its requirement by law to eliminate racial and identity profiling in policing all the way home, because it is something that is personally also important to me as someone who is a Latina and grew up in a low-income community that is heavily policed and knows all the effects that happen because of racial and identity profiling in law enforcement. So thank you all for your work, and thank you for allowing me to do this work alongside with you all.
Thank you, Dominique. And we're going to miss you as well. That's so much change. Okay, everyone. Well, thank you, everybody, and I look forward to the next meeting. And thank you, Chief Swing and Officer Hampton and Dominique and everybody who's leaving us. So we're going to miss all of you.
You.
All right, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Happy holidays, everyone. I won't see you until next year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.